What is going on, guys? We're back with some more Marvel Snap, and today I want to talk about the hot location we just had. Should be just wrapping up, but I still want to talk about it, give some ideas for some strategy. This one's not as kind of super exciting as some of our most recent featured locations, but it still has some juice to it. So we have Dark Dimension right now. Dark Dimension reads, cards played here are not revealed until the game ends. So it's kind of similar to like Invisible Woman, where the cards are hidden. And just like you would use Invisible Woman, the most common use I've seen for Dark Dimension so far has been for Hella decks. Now, if you're not aware, Hella decks typically like to leverage Invisible Woman to hide kind of two discard cards behind Invisible Woman, because then those discards won't trigger until the end of the game. And then for that fourth open slot on Invisible Woman's location, they like to play Hella. And the way it works is at the end of the game, your two discards will trigger. Then your Hella will trigger after those discards, and then Hella summons all of the things you just discarded. It's kind of a quote-unquote safe way to have that discard operate without risking losing Hella. Because one of the biggest weaknesses to a Hella deck is if you have to play discard early, you may discard your Hella if she's in your hand. So now, with Dark Dimension on board, Hella decks have two options. You can either set up your Invisible Woman, or you can use Dark Dimension, or both, so you could be dropping discards all over the place, and as long as you save your Hella for the final card, the combo will work. So that's the key linchpin to that combo is Hella has to be the last card you drop. If you play Hella and then discard, the discard happens after Hella's effect, obviously, and then it won't trigger. So I think that's probably the best use of this location, is to kind of give that Hella deck a little bit of extra consistency that it's desperately needing. Right now, Hella can be on the weaker side if you don't draw your Invisible Woman. So having Invisible Woman or Dark Dimension to work with means you have that extra level of consistency, and then the only thing you have to worry about is not drawing your Hella. Now, decks other than Hella. I think you can use Dark Dimension a good amount for just anything with any sort of downside. What I mean by that is you could play things like Swordmaster, which is a 3 energy, 6 power, slightly above the power curve. And typically the downside would be the discarding of the card. Obviously, you mostly want to play Swordmaster in discard decks where that downside is actually an upside. However, you could kind of toss Swordmaster in kind of a mid-rangey shell and just drop him on Dark Dimension, getting a 3 cost, 6 power that you're not discarding until after the game, so you don't care what you discard anyway. And on a similar line, you could do things like playing Maximus onto this lane, which is a 3 energy, 7 power that gets your opponent to draw 2 cards. You can drop that down into Dark Dimension. You're just getting a flat 7 power, because if they draw 2 cards after the game is over, it doesn't matter unless they have a Devil Dinosaur on the board. So cards with some sort of inherent downside, you can play onto Dark Dimension and have the downside not come into effect until after the game is over. So that's a great option there. Another combo that I've read about recently is you can play Mystique on Dark Dimension. So let's say you play her on curve on turn 3 on Dark Dimension. And since she reveals after the game, if the very last card that you played was a ongoing card, Mystique will actually copy it, despite the fact that you had played her 3-4 turns earlier. So let's just give an example here. Let's say on turn 3, I play just Mystique into Dark Dimension. No, Mystique is my only card on Dark Dimension. Maybe over the course of the game, I play a couple other cards onto Dark Dimension with her as well. On turn 6, I play a 1-drop, and then I play Iron Man. So Iron Man was the very last card that I played. After the game ends and Dark Dimension reveals all of the cards that were hidden, on board, my last card played was Iron Man. So when my Mystique reveals, she will actually copy Iron Man's ongoing ability. Obviously, that's quite difficult to have everything align perfectly, but if you're playing an ongoing deck anyway, it's a combo that you should probably keep in mind when Dark Dimension either is the hot location or just when Dark Dimension reveals in general. Just you can do some really powerful things there. You can even do things like a double onslaught. You can have onslaught in 2 different locations. There's a lot of really great things you can do with that. Another thing that I like using Dark Dimension for is just kind of hiding my power plays. So one of the decks that I really enjoy playing right now is kind of like a mana cheating deck. Things like the Lady Sif Ghost Rider combo. It's got Jubilee in there, Wave, just a lot of ways of cheating out higher mana cards. So one thing I really like to do is kind of just drop down the Lady Sif plus Ghost Rider combo over a couple turns on Dark Dimension, just so that I know that I have, conservatively, if my Lady Sif hits Death, I'm getting 19 power in a lane. If it hits Odin or Infinite, obviously that can scale higher. I know that I have 20-ish plus power sitting on Dark Dimension. My opponent does not know what I've played onto Dark Dimension, so I know that I've got this power play sitting there that my opponent doesn't know. They may infer a little bit based on the deck that I'm playing, but it's a good way of kind of setting up a powerful location without really revealing. And your opponent may be hesitant to invest quite as much into that location without knowing the power level that they need to beat in order to win. That's something that I see quite a bit in Dark Dimension, is that either one player or the other just kind of goes all in on that location, and they usually wind up winning it by way more points than they need, which means, obviously, as a result, you are weaker at the other two locations that you may have been otherwise. So just knowing that you have a consistent, I've got 20-something points here. If it's enough, great. If it's not, great. It's obviously just very good. Other things or things you might want to keep in mind is obviously your on-reveal effects can be hidden here. And I think it's actually another great thing that you can do with Dark Dimension is hide your Wong here. Because typically when you play Wong, your opponent knows, all right, you're going to follow up Wong with, White Tiger, with Ironheart, with Leader, with whatever. You're going to follow up with something, or maybe a Spectrum play if you're playing Wong going. If you hide that Wong on Dark Dimension, now you're leaving it up to your opponent to guess whether or not you drew Wong and all of your combo pieces. Because that's one of the main things when you're deciding whether you're going to retreat against a given deck, whether you're going to snap against a given deck. If you see that you're playing Wong going, or if my opponent's playing Wong going, and they play Wong on 4, I need to constantly be calculating, can I beat Spectrum on turn 6? You have to assume that on turn 6, they're going to have that Spectrum, they're going to play it into the Wong, and if I have Cosmo, great, I play it, but if not, I need to make sure that I am beating Wong plus Spectrum. However, if they don't, on the flip side, if I'm playing a Wong going deck or playing against one, and they haven't played Wong at all, and it's now turn 6, I know that the power ceiling of that deck is way lower than it might otherwise be, and that's going to influence my snap decisions, my retreat decisions. I'm far less likely to retreat if I know that you're not going to have your super high power swing. If you hide your Wong on Dark Dimension, now you just have to have your opponent guess, and it may make them more likely to just assume you have the Wong, and they may be more likely to retreat, whereas maybe you didn't even draw it. Or the flip side of that is your opponents may not see it coming as easily. And what I mean by that is a opponent that maybe hasn't seen Wong going before, or maybe less experienced opponents that aren't as good at identifying deck or archetypes based on, just a couple cards, you may be able to hide Wong here, hit the snap, and they may just see all right, they have Quinjet and a couple other cards, this is pretty weak. I'll keep playing, or maybe they even counter snap because they're not aware of your power plays because you're hiding them. And then you can slap all of that down on Dark Dimension and then get that huge cube swing. And it's also something you have to be aware of on the flip side of you really need to get comfortable identifying what your opponent's playing, getting a feel for your risk tolerance, and just kind of your predicted risk. It becomes even more important on Dark Dimension because it all comes down to knowing what your opponent's playing based on less information than average, and then guessing what combo pieces they've drawn based on the way they're playing and how much they're playing into Dark Dimension. So that's, some of the main decks, cards you can use to leverage Dark Dimension, some of the thought processes and ways it influences gameplay. Dark Dimension in general doesn't have as much to it as some of the other decks. It's more of a mind games and kind of keeping your cards close to your vest kind of thing. But yeah, that's all I got for now, guys. Let me know if there's anything else that I missed covering for Dark Dimension down below in the comment section. Thank you all very much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.